Artificial intelligence is rapidly reshaping the way IT teams deliver value. In this webinar, we will explore how to harness its potential without compromising trust, security, or human connection. My name is Gary Blahr. I'm a service management practice lead here at Efficode, and I am joined by my fellow panelists who I will allow to introduce themselves, starting with Julie.
Hi, my name is Julie Mohr. I'm a principal analyst with Forrester. My coverage areas are in ITSM, ESM, and knowledge management.
Thank you, Julie. And Magnus.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Magnus Sunset. I'm located here in Stockholm, Sweden. I'm also a service management practice lead here at Efficode, trying to answer all these questions.
And on that note, if anyone does have any questions as we go through the Fireside chat here, then you can enter them in the Q&A panel below in Zoom. But what we'd like you to also do, if you ask a question, do include where you're from, because we're fascinated to find out where our audience is participating. But let's kick things off with our first question really for the panel. And we're going to start things fairly simple. And we're going to ask, what does AI in IT service management really mean today? And Julie, as someone I know who's done a lot of research on this, I'm going to throw it open to you first.
So it's a wonderful topic because AI probably 3 or 4 years ago meant something very different than it does today. It is a collection of capabilities, everything from traditional AI to machine learning, natural language processing. But of course, now we have the new entrance into the area, which is the generative AI and, of course, agentic AI. But essentially, what the addition of AI is doing in ITSM is it's allowing us to take a lot of the rote work or the repetitive tasks that we have and put more reliable automation behind the scenes. So it can span everywhere from incident to problem to change to config, making what we do more reliable, oftentimes adding a higher level of consistency in the environment. There are capabilities like being able to summarize note fields and put that into a record. Often the human in the loop with the pressure of getting on to the next call or the next ticket might shortchange what they write. But the AI, right, they're able to create that summary and add it to the ticket. So we get really reliable, consistent results when sometimes the human in the loop doesn't have the time or the patience to do some of these activities. So it is a very comprehensive set of capabilities that span across IT service management.
Thank you, Julie. And Magnus, we got any sort of thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and also to emphasize a little bit about the summarizing thing. I've seen companies having tons of comments, for instance, in their tickets, and it's quite cumbersome to read through all of that. So giving a practical example of that would be, if you have a major incident, people have been working maybe for a couple of days on this huge incident, there would be like hundreds of those comments. And just by summarizing the whole ticket, you can get up to speed rather quick when you're coming in. It's like you're coming into the sort of the situation room and something is going on there, what's going on. But on the subway there or on the car, you can just summarize what's going on. You're coming in there. So people in the room, they don't have to sort of brief you about everything that's happened during the last 5 hours or whatever, because there's so many things going on at the same time, maybe. So as long as people are writing down things into those tickets, and so we can get these summarizing. So I think it's both a lot of automation, yes, but as long as people actually add information and write down what they've done, then you can get good insights and summarize what's going on. And I've seen this multiple times when you have so many tickets and there's so many comments, and then after 12 hours, at least here in Scandinavia, you're not supposed to work more. You have to go home. And then the next team comes in and they need to have a brief, and you're super tired in the head. you need to go home and, well, I didn't know, just read the ticket, then you'll understand. Getting that summarizing the whole ticket would be super good. So I think that's a good value.
Thanks, Magnus. And funny enough, we were talking about this before the webinar about an hour ago, and I was explaining how one of our clients actually been working with in the past week presented us with a problem that previously would have taken us quite a bit of effort to actually resolve. And they've got the customer basically receives a lot of requests, and most of those requests come by email, and there are all sorts of different sorts of requests. And today it's a kind of fairly, well, up until now, it's a fairly laborious task to kind of triage each email and work out what the customer is actually trying to ask. But by using an agentic AI, we've been able to streamline that so that the agentic AI can actually read the emails, interpret them, determine what type of inquiry it is, classify the ticket, and then speed up that first step. So it's really a kind of, from my point of view, I see it kind of as an enabler, as Julie said, to removing some of that less important low value activity that we previously had to do manually.
So far, we've only kind of discussed the benefit to us as IT professionals.
Yeah.
There is also a significant amount of value to customers. So when you push the AI through channels like chat or through your portal, just using a RAG search, you're able to better connect content to the end user. You're better able to understand what they're looking for. You can surface answers instead of a list of results. Typically when you're using something like a Google search, right, you're just given a list of results to go through. This can actually generate an answer for the end user, kind of simplifying their access to information and the ability to interpret what they're asking for. So these capabilities are not just giving IT people superpowers, but they're also really helping to make a better employee experience for end users.
What would you say, just to follow up on that, Julie, what would you say for kind of providing self-service to customers so that they can answer those questions themselves? What's the kind of key things that need to be in place for that to work successfully?
There's a variety of things that you have to pay attention to. And I still believe wholeheartedly in journey mapping, because it really does help you to understand exactly what's going on with your customers. I think over time, the portal will actually become not as important of an interface to customers, because the more that we put through chat and the more conversation-like it is for end users, I don't have to stop working in the application that I'm in. I can pop up that chat window right there and be working, to help resolve something or to access or get answers to something. So it's keeping the end user in the flow of doing their work, which is so much more productive. The disruptions and the queuing and things that we've traditionally done in IT service management, we can create a much better employee experience for that. So I think it's really important for us to focus on that. Where can we reduce steps in the process? Where can we add value? Where can we automate so that the end-to-end experience of the end user is so much more enhanced than it is in the way that we're doing things today?
So similar questions yourself, Magnus. So how can AI improve and accentuate the experience for the end customer?
Yeah, just speaking of the knowledge and all the information that is out there, if you have really crappy knowledge database, wherever it sits, you need to sort of start reducing the amount and go through it, and sort of unpublish things, archive things, and make it, maybe if you want to make AI unaware of it for several reasons. I mean, if you send an attachment in an email, there's some baselines I've read 10 years ago about it saved 9 times or so in different locations, and then it sort of evolves over time. So reducing the amount of documentation that you have, you can also use AI to do that. So your knowledge databases are becoming better. and you can rewrite it easily with AI and make it more up to date. And then when you're at it, you can also use technology to put like a clock on it to be revised within a year or so. But then also we have those, at least here in Europe, the AI Act coming up, and that sort of brings other legal aspects to the table if it's AI produced or not, which is something we all need to be aware of, I would say. But using AI to go through the documentation, see where it sits, update it, that is super helpful, I've seen.
Following on from what you both said, actually, an example I wanted to share was a chatbot I'd seen that did what I consider to be a really good thing from a customer experience point of view, in that it attempted to resolve the issue for the customer through that kind of basic chat in exchange, through whether it's like a pop-up window workflow, or whether it's through like a customer support portal. But if you said to it, actually, I think I need to escalate this to an actual, help provider, that it actually gave a really precise summary of the whole kind of conversation that had been had, and also gave context when it actually handed over to the human who then picked it up. So it made that a very seamless experience. And I think anything that can be done to improve both the customer experience through the AI, but also through that kind of collaboration with the kind of human at the end of it, I think is a goal to achieve as well.
The quality assurance of documentation in that sense is super important, that you actually know it's not an hallucinated article somewhere. It should be sort of qualified as real documentation, so we don't spread too much of the wrongful information. It should be a person behind reviewing it. It makes sense. Yes, still. Because the quality I've seen, sometimes it does hallucinate. As you know, Gary, we've seen that when you ask an agent, can you do this? Ask the same question a couple of times. It sort of keeps the conversation in a repository, and then it sort of derails, right?
You can do, yes.
Well, I want to talk about that knowledge piece, because, we can't necessarily fix poor knowledge management practices by applying AI. The hallucinations can happen for a variety of different reasons. If you don't put the appropriate guide rails, then, the system is trying to do what you're asking it to do, and it doesn't have the information in its training. And so it essentially tries to make it up. That's the primary hallucination that, gives us incredibly, great stories in the media. It definitely gets a lot of PR, but there are also hallucinations that happen because it's surfacing out of date, no longer relevant information. And it's really important to understand that, yes, within a knowledge management practice, you can use AI to improve the results of knowledge management. That's for sure. But these engines, these large language models, they require really good, solid, if you have greater confidence in the training data, you'll get better results coming out of the questions that you're asking. And so, yes, we can look for duplicates of knowledge. We can use it to help, create templates. We can use it or apply templates to knowledge. We can use it to even create new knowledge. But the underlying fundamental practice that we need as an organization to make sure that we're regularly going in and making sure that information is updated. If you do find a hallucination, what do you do about that? There are new roles within the organization that are going to pop up that are around the nurturing and caring and feeding of these models to ensure that the right knowledge is getting in there for training, and that we're not feeding it misinformation.
Following on from that then, Julie, so obviously to nurture and maintain knowledge like that comes with a significant investment and cost. So how can teams actively measure the return on investment they get from making these improvements in terms of the success they get from their AI?
So what I've seen so far, and this is a really good question, because what I'm seeing is that people are looking at our traditional metrics and looking at the impact of those. So, for example, applying, some form or many forms of AI within incident management, we might look at things like first contact resolution, deflection being solved by self-service without actually having to come in to speak with a live agent, and MTTR, right? Those are our traditional anchors. But often these systems are capable of and can work autonomously without any human in the loop. So how do we measure the value of something that it is, found an anomaly and it's corrected, that it's determined that that anomaly needs a corrective action and it's corrected it? That's where we have value, but we don't necessarily have metrics today that are a good indicator. And when you look at the traditional metrics like, first contact resolution or MTTR, when do we start measuring that? Do we start measuring it when the technology is trying to resolve it? Or do we start, right, to the end user? That's one experience. It doesn't just start because a human is now in the loop. So we have to look at what we're measuring and understand what is the end-to-end value that's being provided to end users. Not just, are we solving things more often on first contact or, the total mean time to repair. So we've got to really look at those metrics. I believe that the return on investment lie in new measurements and new things that we have yet to develop. I think it's a great use case for the AI itself, that when, we are in a perpetual cycle of using and improving, that we ask the AI, how do you measure the value? What have you gained for us? How many minutes have we saved? How does that equate over time? Because if it's fed with a lot of data from our service management system, it knows how long it typically takes for that type of incident to happen. And it can say, wow, we've end to end, we've actually saved 3 minutes, and that equates to X amount of hours per year. So I think it's an opportunity for us to look at evaluating how we measure and come up with new ways to understand the value of these systems. We're going to be doing things completely different than the way we've always done them. We have, process-oriented operations that's run like a kind of a factory floor. This is going to require new models, new ways of thinking, new ways of serving customers. And I think along with that, we need to evolve our metrics to understand the return on the investment and the efficiencies that are gained.
Well, thank you for that. And it's one of my favorite subjects. I don't want to derail the Fireside chat, actually, is IT experience management. And I can see value in measuring, customer experience and things like XLAs, as well as a way of measuring the effectiveness of the AI in terms of the value return to the customer. So yeah, you're right. There's lots of, there's going to be a lot of change, I think, is what you're basically saying over the next few years.
But organizations are not thinking about this.
No.
I've spoken to a lot of companies that are early on the adoption cycle. And unfortunately, they are just not, putting thought process into how am I going to measure the value of this? Because if it's going to expand in an organization, for different use cases, you need to be able to prove its value. And that should be something you're thinking about before you roll it into the environment, so that you can kind of baseline where you are today and then understand that impact on the environment. So it's definitely something that absolutely needs attention.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I'll go to this one to yourself, Magnus, first. So if if an organization or a team is looking to start their AI journey with IT service management today, where would you advise that they their starting point should be?
Think where you stand. No, start where you are and really optimize your area where you can actually start with. As an individual, maybe use a couple of tools, start learning what it is about, and try it out yourself, so understand what everybody else is talking about. And when you're entering the team, as a team, how can you improve the ways that you're working? You should always sort of put AI sort of as an appendix to every process that you have. Maybe you have incident management. How can we optimize and automate through AI? Like a continuous service improvement idea. So that should always be, and that's nothing new really, but AI is new as a tool. So we should consider it as a new tool as well. Right now we're experimenting with the assistants and the agents and these things. And when it comes to when you actually start using them, you need to put them into the correct area where they belong, sort of, and understand what they're actually doing. Take ownership of the agents or whatever you have out there. They perform these tasks. Somebody need to update these agents maybe over time because the process are changing, etc. So taking ownership of your agents, the agent bots and what we call them, is super important. And just don't open up. Oh yeah, now everybody start using it. Yeah, but what do you want out of it? Because it could be counterproductive if you don't understand what is going on there. For instance, if you start developing really fast using CI/CD pipelines and you're doing Copilot, creating faster and faster software, then the rest of the organization need to follow suit. It's the same thing with AI. The faster I can produce my material, well, then it becomes, the other guys could be a bottleneck. If I create tons of blogs, maybe, and the editorial needs to go through it before publishing, and then that becomes a bottleneck. So why should I then create so many articles if it's never been published? So, because I can use AI to do those things and a little bit thought behind it. And then it sort of, we will create a lot of new bottlenecks that we haven't experienced before because some areas may not be fit for this purpose of using AI and we're moving 10 times faster. It's like you have these guys sprinting super fast in marathon. Yeah, they'll sprint all the time. In a couple of minutes, they run their marathon. But then you have the other guys that are not using AI, they'll be slower. So there's like rubber bands. Some people are fast and some are not. That's the new reality, I think.
Okay. And Julie, I know you've, again, part of your research, what are the sort of, if you look at organizations that have started their AI journey and the ones that have done that successfully, what's the kind of common attributes or common practices that they followed to make that a success?
Yeah, I think the first step is really to form a partnership with a company that you probably already have their product. You trust, you have a good trusted relationship. The controls are already on that platform for segregating rights and privileges. And that's a really great place to start, because part of what gets you in trouble is when you start surfacing things that people shouldn't have access to, or out of date information. So you really want to start with a use case that can contribute value. You start slow, put it into a non-production environment, get people to test those capabilities. And then when you feel confident that you've got it working the way that you want it to work and you understand the value that it's going to create, it's okay to move that into production. So last year was really the experimental year where people were doing this with the generative AI capabilities. What we see is this year, they're rolling out in production a lot of this summarization, all the things we talked about earlier, creating knowledge articles. That stuff is fairly robust in its the feature capabilities, and you can find really good use cases for that to roll into production. But one of the things that we cannot forget is that there is a cost to this, and there's also an environmental impact. So we don't want to just put it everywhere, hoping that, we're going to get these massive cost savings, because eventually you're going to be using so much of the AI that the cost is going to be extremely high. So the right use cases in the right areas, begin experimenting. This year is really the year that people are beginning to experience or play around with the agentic AI, right? The automated decision making based on more information that you're able to gather in the environment. More autonomy and action are possible with the agents. So again, you don't want to rush that into production. You want to make sure, again, you're working with the vendor that has some early release stuff that you could get involved in, begin testing it in your environment. And then as you become confident that this is the use case that you really want to invest in, then you can roll that into production, probably early next year. But it's definitely not something that you want to wait. You want to begin this experimenting because it's so important for the skills and the knowledge development internally of how to use these tools. Once you get good use cases within IT, it's probably best that we start focusing on how we can make the business successful, because there are lots of little use cases within business operations where they can significantly get value as well. This isn't just something that's going to make IT better.
Okay, brilliant. And I think to sort of close out the panel and the fireside chat and also look ahead a little bit. I know it's very difficult with this very fast moving technology to look ahead, but Magnus and I actually had a call with one of our technology partners talking about MCP, which is this protocol which allows large language models effectively to talk to each other, which is kind of like a future for AI. What do you see, Julie, as the kind of the next step in the kind of evolution of AI in ITSM?
I'm working on some research right now related to the service desk and what the service desk of the future is really going to look like. We have fundamentally relied on queuing. It's been a practice that, back to the day when you went to the butcher shop, right? You took a number and you had to wait in line. It's very much a system that was based on a world without these technologies. So I'm looking at what does the future look like, and it's vastly different. We have a whole realm of technologies now that can help to resolve things proactively before customers even know that there is an issue. Then when a customer is interacting with the AI, there's a lot of resolution that can happen just simply from those interactions. Again, not getting people involved. But if all that low-hanging fruit is managed by technology, when we get into an individual, they need to have a stronger skill set than they used to have. And they're often going to be creating new code, new automation to take care of the exceptions that are now coming through that can't be handled by the technology. So we have to really kind of rethink our organization structures, our skill sets, our operating models that we have had for decades. They need to evolve to something where, if you look at an automobile factory, years ago, it was run like a factory line. Now you go in, you see how the robotics are working and the automation, and the factories look vastly different. You don't have to assemble it in that exact same way anymore. You can economize. We need to rethink how we're doing things in IT operations. We run it like a factory, and that's about ready to change. We fundamentally need to look at new operating models.
That's kind of exciting. Magnus, what are you looking for in the future with AI and IT service management?
Well, to give you a metaphor of it, it's like self-driving trains. You have people are driving the trains in the subway system, let's say, and you have these guys sitting on the monitors. They have the knock table, all the screens, and they just seeing where all the trains are, how many passengers, aka information going in the trains in the subway. So I think that's a good metaphor. Like, people are going back into sort of this not operational room, like this room where you can oversee everything that's going on sort of in your business. And you're sort of, we need more resources over here. Something happened there. There was a little accident So you come into this more of in the control room type of area, rather than you're actually driving the train. You're sort of doing these manual things, So being more strategic, I think that we're looking at the moment. You need to be more strategic. rather than operational. But you need to understand still the operational tasks anyway. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I think we'll wrap things up there. So, Julie, as where can people find out more about your writing and research, or how can they participate if you're looking for participants?
Sure, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Every time I produce a new report, I'll write a blog about it, and you can then link to the blog. You can actually sign up there and follow me, and that way when new research is released and new blogs are released, you get notified. So Forrester.com.
Excellent. And Magnus, who is our blogger extraordinaire, actually, at Efficode, where can they find out more about what you're up to?
Well, yeah, LinkedIn, Magnus Sunset, you have it there. Yeah.
Yeah, and likewise for myself, LinkedIn is the best place to go. I'm currently the gentleman who attends all the events and does the stand-up lightning talks. So if you're interested in any of those, yeah, just check out my LinkedIn. I'm always letting people know where I'm going to be next and what I'm going to be talking about. So anyway, thank the entire panel for today. It's been really interesting talking about AI and the future of AI, and we'll conclude there. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating.